Well, Vice President Mike Pence was at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota on Friday, which happens to be the home of some of our nation's B-52s and ICBMs. He was addressing the air crews there on the strategy to deter North Korea's nuclear program. And the tough talk comes ahead of the president's trip to Asia that starts on Friday. You know, the communist regime has so far conducted 15 missile tests since this last February alone, but it's now been more than 6 weeks since their last missile launch. That happens to be the longest stretch between tests since President Trump took office. And the last firing came just a few days before the president's blunt speech at the United Nations. So did that language have an effect? For more on this, let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, retired former Green Beret commander and former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney. So, Michael, Kim Jong-un, he's held off for now. This especially after the president vowed to, in his words, quote, destroy North Korea if they attacked, said that at the General Assembly speech in September. Do you think that type of language and that strategy has played any part in the temporary suspension of Kim Jong-un's launches?
Well, I think it certainly has had some type of effect, because I'm fairly certain that Kim Jong-un did not believe that the United States had a credible use of military force on the table the last 8 years. I think it also sent a message to Chinese President Xi, and keep in mind he just completed essentially his re-election with the Communist Party Congress that's held every 5 years. That was critical to Xi. He has in a very strong way consolidated power in a way that we haven't seen in China since Mao Zedong. He has essentially enshrined his name in the Chinese constitution. He's also consolidated and put a number of his key people in place. So I think the message that President Trump has sent has been effective not only to Kim Jong-un, but has been effective to Xi. And I would not be surprised if we were a fly on the wall if Xi sent the message to North Korea ahead of this re-election and said, knock it off.
Yeah, then in that case, you think that since those party Congress is over, that we could see a potential another missile launch? Or do you think Kim Jong-un has gotten the message?
Well, keep in mind, while we haven't seen a missile launch, we did just see a successful test firing where the missile didn't actually fly, but it was a test firing of a solid fuel engine. And that is critically important because the North Koreans are progressing in their capability from liquid fuel to solid fuel, which means they can launch the missiles much faster, and us and the Japanese and the South Koreans get much less time in terms of warning.
Yeah,
so they are still progressing their capability.
Doesn't that make it harder to find? I mean, they can put them up.
That's right. It also makes it easier for the North Koreans to put them on mobile launchers, which they can hide all over the country. Makes it much more difficult for us to take out. So, you know, look, time is not on our side here. The tough talk is necessary to actually help our diplomacy, and so that everyone in the region, the Chinese and the North Koreans, believe that we will not stand for this program.
Well, Teddy Roosevelt said, you know, speak softly and carry a big stick. And this administration is not speaking so softly, and they got an even bigger stick. The vice president up at Minot Air Force Base in front of the B-52s. That's the only joint Air Force base that has the B-52s that are older than we are, but they're still up there and working, and the ICBMs. At the same time, we now have 3 aircraft carrier battle groups off the coast of North Korea and in that area. I mean, that really sends a potent, strong message to the North Koreans.
So you've had Secretary Mattis visit Minot Air Force Base. You've had the vice president visit. I think that's sending a signal to the world and to our own military and Congress that our nuclear triad is back. You've also just had this past week Secretary Mattis and Chairman General Dunford visit South Korea and go up to the DMZ, all ahead of the president's trip. Sean, this is a hugely consequential trip. You now have Xi in power. He's consolidated his power. And importantly, he also did not name a successor, so he could be in power for some time to come. And if you listen to his speech that he just gave to the party Congress, he essentially said China is ready and rightfully should take its place as the other world superpower. China is going to move forward in a very aggressive way, and Trump's sit down with him it couldn't be more consequential. We've also just had the re-election of a very conservative prime minister in Japan, and Abe, so a lot of moving pieces in the region.
What would you advise the president do when he sits down with President Xi? I mean, that, as you say, that would probably be one of the most important issues. The White House not saying if the president will visit himself, will visit the DMZ, although, as you said, Mattis did on Friday.
Yeah.
What should the president say, finally, finally to the Chinese president? And do you think they have finally gotten the message and potentially are taking the right steps to try to rein in Kim Jong-un?
Well, I think he has to make it crystal clear that, that the calculus in the region has to change. The Chinese see the North Korean nuclear program as a United States problem, a South Korean problem, and a Japanese problem, and not their problem. And we need to work together, the U.S. and China, to shut this program down. I think he needs to make it clear that we do not seek regime change. Kim can get rid of the program, and the Chinese can still have their buffer state. That's fine. But if that does not proceed that way, then we could see Japan becoming much more aggressive and actually having an offensive capability, which is currently precluded by their constitution. We can reintroduce tactical nuclear weapons into South Korea, which were removed in the 1990s, and that we will take every action necessary to stop this program. But if the Chinese don't stop it, we will.
And quickly, do you think the president should go to the DMZ, or it's not as symbolic?
I do think he should go to the DMZ. It not only sends the right message to the region, but importantly, we have to remember we have 30,000 troops in South Korea, 25,000 in Japan, and it sends the message to them that their commander-in-chief understands what they're going through, that they're on that wall, and he's leading from the front.
And we are all with those troops tonight.
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Colonel, yeah, absolutely. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, thank you for your insight this evening.
All right.
Good to see you.
Eric.
Thank you.